Selena Hill, and this is the new norm on Black Enterprise, sponsored by Cadillac, where I speak to notable business leaders, entrepreneurs, entertainers, and elected officials about their journeys and the impact they're making in today's world. Today, I have the privilege of speaking with Shari Bryant, the co president of Jay Z's Roc Nation, about her journey in the music business, which began when she was just 16 years old, interning at Rockefeller Records. Shari, thank you so much for being here today. I've watched your career from afar. You're someone that I've admired, just your elevation in into becoming an executive and now the co-president of Roc Nation. So super happy to speak with you today. So I've read and seen in other interviews that you actually approached Dame Dash when you were 16 years old back in 1999 and simply asked him, I want to work for you, while he was obviously heading up Rockefeller Records. What even gave you that audacity and boldness to approach him and sort of just ask him to, take you on?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't want to oversell it because it definitely, Damon is a close family friend. My mom used to babysit him. We grew up together in 1199, which was still is a very tight knit, family oriented, complex. It's a series of buildings that's made up of co-ops, I should say co-ops. And so I was able to just watch Damon's career really from like the TV screen, right? I would see him, I've seen him, but then I started seeing him on TV and I'm like, oh my God, I know somebody famous. And I was really young during the time when he started, he launched Original Flavor. I also knew Jay, was introduced to Jay at a very young age, but in a very like passive, like, way. It wasn't like, I knew him really well at that time. But and so as I watched Damon's career just grow, at some point one of my cousins was like telling me about an internship, and I didn't really know what it was. So I asked Damon, I said, can I come down to your office and intern for you? And he was like, sure. It was a very quick moment. I won't say that I had to work up a lot of courage because there was some comfortability there. The courage came when I walked into that office and didn't know anybody, right? And he wasn't even there at the time when he told me to come. So that's where the boldness and the courage kicked in, and I had to grow to that. But that's initially, where it started. That's like the background of it all. Is like I had the pleasure of knowing Damon, and I just thought to ask him once I learned what an internship was, and already being in love with music, I was like, can I come down to the office with you? And then he said, sure. And he told me what time to come.
Okay, so just so that we know, you guys grew up in Harlem. You said your mom was babysitting Dame Dash in 1199 on the east side of Harlem. So you
Mhm.
basically asked, someone that you grew up with, let me just, let me come to the office.
Yep.
You walk into Rockefeller Records at 16 years old. What was that first day in that experience like?
It was amazing. I did not know what I was walking into. I'd never been in a corporate office, up until this point. Very like, adrenaline rushing, anxiety, because I'm like, what am I about to do? And once I walked through those doors, when I tell you the familiarity that I experienced, like just seeing women that look like me, women that look like my aunts, and just my mom's friends, it automatically gave me a sense of belonging, automatically. Um, and I always talk about that because I'm like, the power of representation is real, because I don't know if I would have had the courage to even keep going into that office without having seen somebody that looked like me. And so I've seen Carlene, Shaka, Dara, Omi, all of women there were men there as well, but the women is what caught my eye immediately, because I don't know what I expected, but I didn't expect that. And I seen them all, just, you knew immediately that they were in positions of power. They were running around doing things, people were asking them, what should they do next? And it was very like, Rockefeller was like an all hands on deck label, right? And so everybody was doing everything. So it was like organized chaos. But as soon as I walked in, I immediately felt a sense of belonging.
That's amazing that, you were able to see yourself in the
Yes.
women that were running Rockefeller Records. Again, you being just 16 and 17 years old. What was your first big assignment? When is it that you sort of went from intern to, oh no, Shari Bryant is a major part of this team?
Major part, I would say, was I think there was two instances, right? Because when I started working there, I was interning under Carlene Ballin, who was Damon J and Big's executive assistant. And so being able to do that gave me, I mean, that was the foundation of everything. Without that, I don't know that I would have understood the ins and outs of the company at the time, right? Because you had access. You were in the main office, so you had access to everything. Um, but the next step of that was with Shaka Pilgrim. She assigned me the Young Guns. They were from state property at the time. And she was like, I need individual people to be assigned to each member of the group. So it was the Young Guns, Oskino and Sparks, Freeway, and Beanie Siegel. So she split the role, the responsibilities up between me, Emmanuel, Adrian, and E. Pierre at the time. And so working the Young Guns was like my first major project where I was able to really understand the ins and outs of marketing, what it took to put an album to market, photo shoots, marketing plans, all of those great things. We were able to work it with Def Jam. So Amber Noble at the time was the marketing person from Def Jam. And so I felt like that was my first step into, all right, you got some real work where people are paying attention. And honestly, the artist's careers are on the line, right? You have to do right by this. But I was prepared. It was scary for sure, but I was definitely prepared because, again, as I mentioned, Rockefeller was it was boot camp. You had to learn everything. You couldn't be great at one thing. That was inexcusable. You had to be ready because if Damon called you or Jay or Biggs at the time, they called you and had a question, best believe you had to figure out an answer to it, and it could have been something totally out of what you did on a day to day, but you had to have an answer. And so I think being multifaceted or being groomed to be multifaceted helped me to really step into that role of Young Guns marketing manager at the time and put that album out. And then the other piece of it was Cameron came and signed with Rockefeller, but he was managed by Damon first. And I was assigned to him on a management side as like his day-to-day under Carlene. And so with that, with building the relationship with Cam and then him realizing that I was from Harlem, that was like an immediate cheat code for him to be like, okay, you in. That grew into me, doing the marketing and almost being like the unofficial member of diplomats because I had to be everywhere they were as well. And so those were two important projects that I think really helped to elevate me at the time.
And Shari, you're still a teenager. Well, I mean, those are major projects. Those are major roles, and you're still a teenager at this point.
I'm still a teenager, definitely with Chris and Neve. I'm so bad with the timing and the aging, but if I was maybe with Cam, I might have been 20. I don't know, but I was on the cusp. So I was either, 19 or going into 20, but yeah, still really young.
How did you feel prepared mentally, or were you at the time not aware of the gravity of this role? Like for a lot of people, if I interviewed, for a role to market major artists,
Mhm.
people get intimidated and they wouldn't even feel prepared enough to apply for a role that big. So how did you feel confident enough to take on these roles?
I didn't. I did it scared. I didn't feel confident enough. I did not feel prepared enough. I didn't know if it was if I was ready for it. Sometimes I was like, maybe this isn't, the right thing for me to be doing. I still have a lot of learning to do. But it taught me an important lesson in doing things scared and not being afraid of, not being afraid of the unknown. But also, I think an important piece of it is that I had a great support system at Rockefeller. So even going into that and being scared and not knowing if I could handle it, I knew that I had people that were supporting me, that were in power, that will help me through the process. So, support is really important as well.
Wow, that's, I could only imagine. So, what challenges and lessons are you learning, again, such a young age while, helping to manage Cam? He's rising, one of the biggest artists in hip hop at the time, while also doing Young Chris and Neef. What are you learning at this time?
Well, definitely learning how to multitask and delegate and finding time to do it all because I was in college as well at this time. So I graduated from John Jay College with my bachelor's degree at the same time that I was working at Rockefeller. And it was really, the job required traveling. The job required all hours of work. So figuring out a way to carve out time to be a college student and do this job. I didn't realize it at the time, but it was showing me multitask. It was showing me how to manage a lot at one time. I also learned how to find my voice in this all. I, again, coming in at 16 years old, I wasn't the the overly confident, boisterous young lady. I was very reserved, and I didn't feel comfortable speaking up in meetings. It was that thing of, well, do I understand this 100%? Can I say something out loud? Am I going to sound crazy? So I definitely found my voice in it all. And it was by trial and error. Sometimes I might have actually sound crazy in what I was suggesting at the time. But I've learned as you do things over and over again and with the right intention, it eventually comes all together for you, right? And I was definitely always a student. So I would always look at how other people that I admired, how they conducted themselves and take pages out their book. And then the people that I didn't admire, make sure that I didn't make those same mistakes. So um, I will definitely say the multitasking, the ability to find my voice. I'm trying to think of what else I've learned. Those were two key components. I'm sure there's a lot more that's not coming to mind, but and then just like I said before, just being able to do things scared. That's something that I preach a lot. Is I know that it's so much. It's the fear of the unknown is a real thing, and it prevents so many people from really reaching their potential. And it's important to just go out there because once you do the first thing, like those doors just start opening for you. And so I think it's really important. It's a really important lesson that we got to apply.
Yeah, no, those are major keys. Thank you for sharing that. You know, at that time, you were literally making history. Were you aware of that at that time? Like, what was the feeling like?
I was not aware of it at all. I didn't think about these moments, right? Like interviewing and talking about the moments that we did over, what is it, like 2 decades ago at this point. I wasn't aware of it. I was just excited to be in the work. And that's what I realized more than anything is like when you just focus on the work, the execution, you don't realize it, but those things will get celebrated at some point. Maybe not all of them, but there's going to be things that come back around. But it's all about just, I always say to myself, don't get caught up in your last, like, don't get caught up in the last, what is the word? Don't get caught up in your last, like
Last
your last,
accomplishment.
your last accomplishment, right? Because I always say that's how you feel on your next move. So I'm more about just focusing, like every day. Okay, what am I taking off the list today, right? What are we accomplishing now? And at some point, you can celebrate, but I like to just keep my head tunnel vision
Mm,
and keep it going. And so I think that had a lot to do with, even how I got here today. I
mm.
didn't realize it at all. We was just doing the work.
Just doing the work. And one thing I love
Mhm.
that you said is, you didn't really have your voice. You had to develop that over time. How did
Yeah.
you get to the place where you can now walk in a room and not feel imposter syndrome and feel, like you belong?
Yes, yes. I think I've gotten to that place by doing it over and over again. Doing it over and over again has given me the confidence to really realize, okay, I do know what I'm doing. I'm not here by mistake. Like, you can't make this up, right? You can't manufacture this. This is the results of really hard work. And I had to have that talk to myself at one point where I'm like, okay, Shari, you gotta acknowledge your greatness. To be honest, you have to acknowledge your greatness. Like, it's nothing was handed to you. Of course, like, you've had support systems, but nothing was handed to you. And once I acknowledge that, um and sometimes I do have to remind myself still, right? Because as you grow, you elevate, and the rooms get bigger, the people get more important. And so there's still this sense of like, okay, Shari, you still belong here. You've done X, Y, and Z. Like, this mental rolling, just kind of like rolling through your head of like your resume in a sense. But that's what really helped me to be comfortable in these positions and going into these rooms, is knowing that I didn't cheat the grind. Like, I work for everything that I work for every step of the way. I work for everything that I got.
Amazing. Speaking of rooms, after you left Rockefeller, I read that you went on to work for Def Jam, Atlantic Records, Warner Brothers, Alamo Records. How was that? What experiences did you take from Rockefeller in that foundation that you brought to each and every other label afterward?
Everything. I always say that everything is attributed to Rockefeller. It was the foundation. Had I not started there, I don't think I would be the executive that I am today. Again, it just goes back to, especially the role of having to understand it all. That prepared me for so much, and I didn't realize it at the time, because when you walk with a sense of, it's like you think from a holistic standpoint when you're taught that way. And so, although I was assigned to certain positions, say marketing, because that's really where I ended up, and that's where my career grew in, is marketing. I wasn't only thinking about creative, I was thinking about financial budgets, P&L. I was always thinking from a holistic scope. And that's what prepared me for the executive roles that I am in today, being able to not just think one dimensional, but thinking in a way where you're also thinking about the business and not only thinking about the creative.
Yes, and like you said, all of those experiences prepared you for who you are today and where you are. So after you left Rockefeller, you went on. What is it that brought you back? And you when you came back, it was now Roc Nation.
Yes.
What brought you back?
A conversation with Jay. I was already thinking about what I wanted to do next. I always knew, not always, but I will say, within the last, before I started at Roc Nation, the last 5 years or so, I was thinking, okay, what's next? Like, what's the trajectory look like from here? And so I knew that a president position was in my cards. I was like, I'm going to figure this out. And I just happened to have a conversation with Jay, um, and we get here today. I actually had a conversation with Jay and Desiree, and we got to where we are today. So,
And
and then again, there was the relationship there. So, um, understanding what their overall goals with the company. It just aligned with my thinking at the time and where I wanted to be and how I wanted to be a part of the music business, because it changed. After a while, I was just kind of like really shaping how I wanted to show up in the business and how I wanted to make an impact. And I felt like Roc Nation was the place that would give me the runway to do that.
So you come back to Roc Nation as co-president
Yes.
around 2019, I think. So you've been there about 5 years. How does I'm thinking the pressure that may come with that, because by this time, Roc Nation has already had J. Cole, Rihanna, obviously, Jay Z. So you have mega stars that Roc
Mhm.
Nation found, groomed, and cultivated to the next level out of the stratosphere. So when you're appointed as president, are you feeling any pressure at all to carry that legacy?
Absolutely. I felt the pressure to create the new generation of what it looked like. And I've never been one to, I don't love anything easy. And I don't suggest, I don't use that as advice, actually. But I don't love anything easy. Like, it's really important for me to be able to come in and make my mark, but also find the holes and be able to fill them. And I think with the conversations that we were having around what the future of Roc Nation label looked like, because there's different verticals with the company, but the label specifically, there was definitely some holes that me and Omar came in and worked to fill. And they aligned the energy that needed to be put into those holes, filling those holes, aligned with what I wanted to do in the business, because the business was all about developing artists and um, being able to support artists that we really felt like could make an impact. Not the here today, excuse me, not the here today, going tomorrow artists, but the artists that we felt like could really make an impact. And that was important for us. And so, yes, pressure for sure. But I think it's healthy pressure. I think it's pressure with purpose, if that makes sense.
I love that.
Mhm.
Pressure with purpose.
Yeah,
I just thought of the line, pressure bust pipes, to
that's
quote Jay himself. So you got to get out that comfort zone to really get to the next level.
yeah.
When you talk about artists today, you've been in the game for 20 years at
Hmm.
this point. What challenges are you facing today, as opposed to when you first started?
Uh, Definitely the oversaturation of music and being able to, it's much harder to fight through the noise. Like it wasn't as hard before. And is it a bigger challenge? Yes. Do you have to learn how to evolve with the business? Yes, right? And so we sit back and we strategize on how do we break through the noise? Where's the audience? Let's pay attention to the people that actually care. But it just takes longer. It takes longer. I think that um, we would have, what we have to do in 5, we would have been able to do in 2. You know,
Years.
Years, correct. So that's been one of the major challenges that I continue to talk about. I continue to talk about with the artists, because it takes more resiliency from them, and so we just try to make sure we pace out. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much what we focus on. But that's been the major challenge for sure.
Got you. Sherry, I know we do have to let you go, but before we do, I also want to talk about your project, Pink is Love, which you
Yeah.
launched to empower other women. Tell us when and why you started this.
Yeah, so I started in 2013. The reason why I started it is exactly what we talked about in the beginning, is not understanding the power of representation until I walked into that door at Rockefeller Records, right? And then women, young women started coming up to me and telling me that I was an inspiration, and I didn't even understand. I didn't think that anyone really understood. knew what I was doing, right? But Instagram was launching, so there was more visibility. Artists are posting you, um, so you're able to get people are seeing your face more. And I'm sure for me, still look young at the time, and just young women looking at it and looking at me and seeing that they could do it. I was like, okay, we this is a message that I think is really important. And so it was all about women living to their peak potential. I played around with potential. And I just started doing like different things, went back to my community. We did a vision board party. I've done, events with young women, just inviting them out, having conversations with some notable women in front of the young women and allowing them to ask questions and just understanding what is out there, right? Because I always said, if I didn't have the chance to work in the Rockefeller, I don't know that I would have understood there was a business in music. It wasn't like I was being taught about it in school, right? There weren't any documentaries or any of those things on TV at the time. There wasn't Instagram, So it was really important for me to just bring more light into the possibilities, but also just encouraging, like finding a support group, like a sisterhood that women can go to and be able to lean on each other for growth, because we face so many different things. And I'm fortunate enough to have a beautiful sisterhood, but I also know everyone doesn't have that. And so that's solely what Pink is Love is about.
I love that. Let us know how we can find Pink is Love, how some of us can join the community and just get inspired from it.
Yes, so we have our website, Pink is Love, PINKESTLUV.com. And also an Instagram page, Pink is Love, at Pink is Love, at Pink is Love. And we also have finally secured our non-for-profit. So there will be a lot more to come around just the Part of My Glow Foundation.
That's amazing again, Shari. Thank you so much for your time today. Everything you've been doing for the culture, it's so refreshing to see a young Black woman like yourself. You've been keeping your head down, getting the work done behind the scenes, countless hours. We can only imagine how much labor you've been putting in, and I'm happy you're finally getting your flowers, that you deserve it.
Thank you, Selena. And as I mentioned before, thank you for recognizing women like me. It takes us, it's a two-way street, and we have to support each other. So I appreciate you for being at Black Enterprise and using your platform to reach out to me to be here with you.